Hello, everybody, and welcome to the sixth episode of the Brawl Backroom Interviews, where we sit down with various members of the BBR and ask the questions you want to hear. My name is CT Chibo, and I'll be your interviewer for tonight. And with me here is DeLux. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Chibo. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Why don't we start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself?
I am DeLux. I was originally known as Lux when I first started playing, and then I added the D. The long story short on that actually was when I first joined the Smash Lab as a member, they had another member that also went by Lux. So when we were working on projects, people would get confused and they would start talking about the other Lux. So I finally just went ahead and changed my name to DeLux. The D being for because I was the most important Lux, obviously.
Oh, makes sense.
Of course.
Uh,
It also goes into Ice Climbers and desyncing a little bit. That's actually probably more accurate because the other Lux was kind of a cool guy too.
I like that tie-in. Actually, makes a lot of sense how you hear about it. Where are you from? You're from here in the U.S., correct? What region?
I live in Lawrence, Kansas, which is pretty much the hometown for KU, Kansas University. It's
All right,
a
great.
suburb of Kansas City.
Now, I also see you don't only enter tournaments in the Midwest. I also see you casually around the Southern California area. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, my parents live out in that area, and I grew up out there. I didn't actually start playing Brawl until I went to KU, so it was kind of ironic that I got competitive in Kansas, where the scene isn't amazingly large, and left that huge scene. But pretty much every time I've gone out to SoCal, except for like the first tournament, I've usually done, halfway decent, top 10-ish,
Hmm.
give or take.
That's great, and I can also relate to that in a way is where there's so many players around Atlantic North that were like younger and now they're going into college, kind of maybe falling out of Smash. I was like you, where I didn't actually start competitively till I went to college in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Now going into you had mentioned that you're an Ice Climbers main, which the whole Desync, Deluxe whole tie-in there. We just had a new tier list release from the Brawl Backroom. Any thoughts on that? Because there is some interesting controversy about Ice Climbers in that. Care to share your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the main controversy so far has been that Ice Climbers got moved to number two. I think is the main thing, but specifically, they got put into their own tier that's classified
Oh,
in the S tier.
yes.
That is pretty much, and I think in terms of voting, I don't know what I'm at liberty to say in terms of the leaking policy for the BDR, but I do know that I voted them the lowest out of anybody, at least to my knowledge, which meant that in the way they formulate the voting, I was an
Interesting.
outlier, so my vote was for specifically Ice Climbers wasn't factored in. It was pretty much an aggregate of all the other people that voted. I think there was one voting member that voted them first. Actually, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I
I
didn't say who
think
it was. So.
I think the person who voted them first actually did make that public, but I don't
Oh
know for
yeah, okay.
100%
So
fact.
yeah. Well,
So
hopefully
maybe it's best
that's
that we
what.
do leave that.
But yeah. So it balanced out. So pretty much everybody, or most of the people, put them too. But
Hmm.
whether they belong in their own tier, that's kind of debatable. I mean, from a purist standpoint, how they the criteria they use to analyze the data, they do belong in their own tier just because most people voted them number two. But
Hmm.
in terms of how the voting was portrayed, people were just told to make a list. Nobody really said that the list was going to formulate the tier division specifically just based on the votes that were given out. At least I was under the impression that like the votes were there was probably going to be a round after they figured out what order everybody was in
Hmm.
that
I agree.
they would divide the tier list. But that's not entirely up to me. That's up to the project leader for the BBR. And I think they did a good job as far as putting the project out because it's been a long while since the BBR has put out something that's kind of been relevant and putting out a tier list so quickly. It's kind of remarkable if you think about it in terms of
Hmm.
compared to past endeavors that they've undertaken. So
I was very
it's good.
shocked because I was like a little inactive at some parts, and I came back to the BBR and I didn't notice the voting for this version of the tier list, and I voted, and then like before I knew it, like 3 weeks later, it's like, hey, the new tier list is out. I'm like, really? That's all we done that quick? What? That's so
Yeah, I mean,
unusual for
like
us.
I wish they had waited until the matchup chart came out, and I wish that they had waited a little bit until we're kind of like in an influx as the metagame is going in the terms of there's been kind of a big movement as far as tournaments have gone to minimize the stage list, and that in itself is a huge factor in Ice Climber play. I mean, if you look at Apex stage list or Unity stage list, the no solo Ice Climber has come in a top 8 to my knowledge, except for, I mean, Lane in 2009 or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of debatable because he's always gone DDD and Meta Knight in the certain matchups. But and then I think Esan did well with Ice Climbers at well before, but that was Meta Knight banned.
Yeah.
So it's like the rule set and the stage list is a huge factor, and I kind of would like to see that stabilize more before there's like a definitive tier list. Because to be honest, I personally don't really see an argument for Ice Climbers being second on the tier list, given the rule set of like the Apex rule set or the Unity rule set. That it's kind of doesn't make any sense when a character is giving away a free win per game almost across the cast. Probably like half to 2/3 of the cast pretty much would get a free win. Especially like in a Unity rule set of Rainbow Cruise and Brinstar, which I still have to play on in the Midwest. Not a lot of the East Coast or West Coast Ice Climbers have to deal with that, but that stage will eat you. Like, there's a set that I had with game in tournament where I fell through Brinstar. It happened. So
I've never seen that happen before. You fell through Brinstar.
it was my fault. I air dodged, and I should know the stage better. But it was one of those moments where it seemed I watched it on replay, and when it happened in like real life, or when it first happened, it seemed like it happened a lot slower than it did on the video. I'll put it that way. It was game.
Now, a lot of what you mentioned is that with how you voted, you don't think Ice Climbers are first or second best, and there's so many different defining factors, as in tournament results or the stage list, the rule set, that can attribute to them possibly being lower than second. But I think one important thing to note is if a character isn't going to be first or second best, what are some of their worst matchups, you think? Like, who should they be afraid of going into a tournament?
I don't think that they should be afraid of anyone in the context that pretty much everybody is going to be more scared of you than you are of them. Just the whole entire notion of the infinite punishment is kind of like, well, they're not used to playing with it, so, or at least most people are. There are very few people that are out there that are real tournament threats that, it's nothing's new to them. They've seen it all before, so that's not as much to play on. But just on a pure matchup tool-based system, I have a pretty simple rule of thumb that I like to tell people when they're thinking about it. If the character has swords or items, they probably go even or better with Ice Climbers on
Interesting.
Like the Apex stage list. If you think about it, like Meta Knight, probably slight advantage to a heavy advantage depending on the stage list. Then characters with items, Diddy, it's pretty even, maybe slightly in Ice Climber's favor lately, but again, depending on the stage list, especially that second or third game, depending on who wins the first one. Rob, that's a pretty garbage matchup sometimes.
I agree.
His item, obviously, the gyro, and it's not he doesn't win because he has the gyro, but it just kind of so happens that all the characters that have items tend to do well against Ice Climbers for whatever reason. The only outlier in that rule that I've found has been Wolf, but that could be that I personally have a Wolf problem, and that character is like the most broken thing to happen to the game since the beginning of time. But at the same time, Link has swords and items, and you can trade out Wolf for Link to make the rule even out.
Now, more like a personal thought in this is we recently saw Salem do very well with Zero Suit, and she's a very, very fast character, but she doesn't have swords or items. How do you think Zero Suit does against Ice Climbers?
She has items. They spawn with her.
Or okay,
they do like 1 billion damage. So Ichigo, that's like you did that thing in a tournament where people forget that the items exist, and then all of a sudden they don't have their first stock, and Salem's at like 12%, and then the game's already over. So
you got me there.
But I think like on a tools standpoint, I also play Zero Suit Samus. Pretty semi-competitively. I definitely use her in doubles and have more moving to using her in singles, just because I don't really like playing Ice Climbers too much in a tournament, or especially locally. I don't like playing Ice Climbers, but I would definitely say that from a tool standpoint, I think she does really well. She's very mobile. Her back air on landing is absurd in terms of trying to punish it. If the Zero Suit buffers a flip jump out of it, which is her down special, they're invincible on startup. So technically speaking, in theory, you can back air Ice Climber shield for free, and then flip jump away, and they would never be able to grab you. But nobody plays TAS Brawl. It's real Brawl, so that always doesn't work out. But it's also at the same time one of those matchups where, on paper, I feel like she does really well, but that hasn't translated so much into results. Vinny's definitely beaten pretty much any Zero Suit Samus. He's played, I think 9B, the last thing that I can remember, he lost to Choco in Japan, but then he ultimately beat him later on in the Grand Finals or Losers Finals or whenever they ended up playing again.
And the actual tournament I went to, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, you would know more about than I would, but definitely it's kind of I guess from a result standpoint, it's pretty even to maybe Ice Climber's favor, but I think from a tool standpoint, like in tournament or just in general, I mean, I could see it very well changing to Zero Suit winning, but I would think more games would have to be played out because that matchup doesn't really happen too often. I mean, I guess the most notable one that might have occurred would be Nick Riddle and Esam, but why would Esam go Ice Climbers against Zero Suit Samus when he has that Thunder God in his pocket? It would make no sense at all.
Now, when speaking about the tournament results earlier, you said that Ice Climbers rarely break into top 8, but one of the times where they have is Lane placed top 8. I think you said the first Apex in 2009. Otherwise, is there any kind of change of play in Ice Climbers throughout the years? Maybe like some techniques that they used to use a while ago, but not anymore. Like, do you think that they've actually kind of just need to get back to the basics? Because I mean, in terms of what the character is, you get a grab, you get a kill. Do you think sometimes people forget about that and they need to kind of slow down, just think of like what they really need to be doing? Like, what has really changed in terms of their gameplay over the years?
It's kind of fascinating when you look at the history of the Ice Climber metagame. Like, in terms of the two, like when I first came into the scene, there was kind of like a developing two different scenes or styles of play for the Ice Climbers that were kind of mutually exclusive, I would say, that the Ice Climbers would specialize in. When I first learned to play with my heroes at the time, Lane was winning everything, and then pretty much I think the undisputed second to best, or maybe tie or up there, second or third would be Lane and Hylian. And Lane was, played a lot more basic, kind of sync style of play and made hard reads to outplay his opponent. And Hylian was a very huge proponent, it seemed like to me, of playing desynced with grab setups and working off of that. And believe it or not, a lot of what I do is just kind of taking what Hylian originally did and just kind of souping it up with some of the new technology that I've discovered and invented. But as the metagame has kind of gone on, I feel like it's been where a lot of Ice Climbers, they start out in like a certain school, whether it's like Esam started out in this very non-desync style hard reads, kind of very similar to how Lane played, and Vinny at the moment or for a while was very desync oriented and very grab setup, kind of like Picera was. But if you look at as they progressed, it's kind of gotten a little bit more of like a hybrid style or kind of a combination, and it really is matchup dependent on which one is the most effective. But that's why you kind of see like there's a wide range of like certain Ice Climber players that are like considered the top Ice Climber players. They'll do really well in a certain matchup, but then when it comes to another matchup, they don't really do as well. And really, I think the only matchup that I really see that has like the most variation in how it's approached has been the Meta Knight matchup. Believe it or not, like there's a bunch of different ways that Ice Climbers have tried to break that matchup with varying success, but and I think it just might be one of those things where they kind of have to incorporate literally everything that they can to get an advantage. Like, just because when you're playing from a disadvantage, every little bit, every little situation that might convert into a stock, that is the difference between winning and losing.
Mm-hmm. Now, mentioning how you kind of took Hylian style and evolved off of that, do you have any secret technology for ice climbers you'd be willing to share with us?
Well, I mean, I try not to keep a lot of my stuff secret. I For the longest time, I'd always post like on the Ice Climber forum, different things that I've discovered. I guess one of the things I wish, or I guess I could do better in terms of sharing some of the information is actually making videos of what I discover, because more or less I'll just type like a technical description of exactly what I found, how you do it technically, and then people respond back. You should make a video because I don't know how to do this just based on you writing it down. I mean, some of the threads that I make are pretty detailed. There's a long list of them in the Ice Climber forums, but I mean, I think things that I do that none of the other ice climbers do, that I see, I do the triplets chain grab for the most part. That's slowly starting to be incorporated. I mean, like, I know that Japan 9B especially has been starting to incorporate that, but that was like months and months after I started using it. I do a lot of the buffer desyncs that I discovered too that not a lot of people use. A lot of people, like, if you see an ice climber player that dashes 3 times back and forth in order to have Nana throw out a grab setup, that's kind of like outdated technology in my opinion, but certain people like to use it for whatever reason, just because they're more familiar. It's like a really easy window to hit, and throwing out a desync that has a option window of 20 frames for execution as compared to something that has like you need 2 or 3 inputs in 10 frames. It's a little easier, I guess, under pressure, which might be why they do it that way. But I'm very of like the mindset that if I can execute, then I need to pick the best option regardless of like the execution threshold, and then I need to learn to execute the best options. If that makes any sense. So
It does.
I would sit and just drill different techniques over and over again just so that I would have it down.
Hmm. Yes, thank you for the very, very detailed explanation there. I really enjoyed that answer. I want to kind of switch gears a little bit to the Brawl backroom in general. I mean, that's, after all, that's
All right.
what we're performing this interview for. Um, Going back to when you first got into the Brawl backroom through the application process, your application was, you're kind of a troll. I'm not gonna lie. If I can quote your application, if you don't
All
mind,
right.
that you can infinite dimensional cape legally using only the Wiimote with no need for a classic controller or nunchuck. Um, I don't know about you, it seems, but I put a lot of work into my application to get into the VBR. How did you manage to get in with this kind of nonsense? Like, it's hilarious by all means, but like, it does it like really speak to your character, like how you treat yourself to get tournaments like with the BBR, like more lighthearted. But honestly, how did you get by with this?
Well, I was originally rejected when the first when they announced who made it in during those cuts, and actually I was told by a lot of people the main reason why I was rejected was because of that application, and pretty much I just went and PM'd a lot of people and begged in the context that, I mean, you have to, as far as the player goes, I mean, I'm not really new anymore, but when I first came in, I came in late 2010, early 2011. So Brawl had been going along for a while, and a lot of these people are really freaking good at this game and very influential on the political level. So, and looking at myself as an applicant, the first time I went through, I didn't really see that much different between the first time I applied and failed compared to when I was going to write that new application that everybody has read or has seen. That's kind of funny. So I really sat down and thought about it, and it was like, well, if the first one wasn't good enough to get in, and I haven't really done anything noteworthy since then, except maybe go to more tournaments or something like that. I really felt like I needed something that might set myself apart from everybody else. So when I was doing the application, I was reminded of, there's actually a college application essay that's pretty famous that I actually parodied or modeled, or however you want to say it. That it like, I don't know. I think at some point it was debunked as not an actual admissions essay, but like a scholarship essay or something like that. But it's actually very much in that same style, and I thought it might be the best way to go about demonstrating that I'm more than just. A lot of people say that I'm very dry a lot of the times because of how like technical the stuff that I would write and things like that. So I just kind of wanted to demonstrate my personality and point out just that there's a lot of depth to my who I am as a player, I guess. And then it didn't go over very well with the BBR people, but and they pretty much told me that if I had just sent in the standard application, it would have gone a lot smoother. But then I pretty much told them, which I'm not like it was the truth, that I didn't think I was going to make it in without doing something drastic or crazy, or going for the Hail Mary and shooting for the moon and making the magic happen. And sometimes the risk is not worth the reward, but other times, I mean, I did get in. I don't think that they will let that happen again. But if somebody tries it, I would probably endorse them if their application was good.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not
yeah,
in charge
as
of
you said,
admissions.
in the end it worked, so that's all that matters, and it definitely did set you apart. And I mean, maybe with just a standard application you could have gotten in, but otherwise they still had to reach out to you, and they noticed that, like, I think even though you said it was probably not the best way to go about it, as it could have made things easier had you not done it. um, I think how you said it really speaks out to your personality and the way it got you noticed. I think it was a great way to go about it.
Maybe I don't know. I don't want to encourage people like a whole rash of like crazy
Well, yeah, if it gets
applications like
overused at
that.
this point, it's like, oh, you're
Yes.
just copying
It's,
DeLux.
it's like the novelty. Yeah, like I just went for it because it was kind of a gimmick, I guess. That's kind of how I play Brawl too.
So you're
I
playing
throw
2008 Brawl with this application right here. You're still using gimmicks before people found out how to counter it.
Yeah, more or less. They yeah, just trying to stay ahead of the metagame a little bit.
Hmm. Now, as for the Brawl back room, are there any thoughts you have on like some of the projects that go on back there? Because we just released a tier list. We work on the matchup chart. Are there any other projects you would like to see us work on in the future, or any kind of changes to like the current projects we do?
I'd like to see a rule set guide come out,
Hmm.
and I don't mean like I don't think that there's going to be huge reception or a huge positive reception if they came out with a recommended rule set, just because of the whole entire Unity rule set committee, and that's still being pretty fresh in the past.
No,
But
oh, sorry.
oh yeah, but I would definitely like to see a rule set guide so that if a new TO wanted to come into the scene and host a tournament and they needed rationale on why certain rule set choices are made,
Hmm.
having a guide for like why why should I have Rainbow Cruise legal as compared to Brinstar? Why should I have Halberd banned? Why should I have Meta Knight legal or banned? Why should the timer be 5, 8, 10 minutes? Why should I have one stock or three stocks? Stuff like that would be a valuable resource to new TOs that not a lot of people really put a lot of thought into outside of do I like it or do I not like it, which is a pretty terrible criteria to
Hmm.
determine rules and stuff like that.
I agree. I think that'd be a really good project to work on. But speaking of which, the Unity rule set committee. What are your thoughts on the concept of the Unity rule sets?
I feel great remorse that it did not work. And if there's anything that I look back on and just kind of like wish that it had made it, it would be that committee. And not just because I was like, one of the major players in it and would like play PR for them, because I hated that, like having to answer questions for people, even though I didn't necessarily agree with some of the
Hmm.
policies and stuff like that. But, having to play the nice guy to keep the community relations up. I think that the collapse of the Unity rule set committee, or I mean, not just the committee, but just the idea that we should have a unified rule set so that everybody plays on the same page. It was a major blow in terms of like the viability of the game going forward,
Hmm.
at least in my opinion. Just because, like, I mean, just even on, as I was mentioning, the tier list itself. How do you make a tier list for ice climbers if you don't know what the rule set is going to be? If we play on the Japanese rule set where you can't ban FD, then yeah, ice climbers might belong in their own second tier. But if we're playing on the Unity rule set, then ice climbers are pretty garbage on Rainbow Cruise and Brinstar, so they definitely don't belong second on that tier list. But if you go to Apex, they haven't had the results really to show that they belong, that they're second, and nobody really thinks about that kind of stuff. And it just that's just like one project that it can matter. I mean, in terms of like people playing on the same page for nationals and stuff like that, it's just kind of sad to me that that it didn't work out in the end. And if any TOs want to get together and try to make something happen again, I'd try to step up and help. But at this point, I think that time might have passed, unfortunately, and that's really sad for the future of Brawl.
I agree. I mean, I was definitely one of the biggest pushers of the standardized rule set as well, right there with you. And ultimately, the project just didn't work out as much as I hoped that it would. Now, do you think it's important?
Now, do you want me to throw the drama out or the shots fired for the interview? Or shall we hold off on that? Because that could be fun. I mean, let's talk. Let's real talk.
Who doesn't like some shots fired? Honestly, this is the interview where we're gonna get all of it out there. Go ahead and say it.
Just so it's on the record, the Unity Rule Set Committee was disbanded literally the day after we passed a major overhaul of the rule set to accommodate pretty much every criticism that the public was leveling against the Unity rule set. Essentially, I designed a system called Unity 3.0 because at the time it was on Unity rule set 2.1 and 3.0.
If you don't mind me asking real quick, that the change that you're alluding to, was this ever made public? I forget.
It was never. It was never announced outside of. We kind of have said that we have a couple big things in the works, which obviously we did because it was going to be the huge upgrade to how the rule set was determined. But essentially, it was going to be a huge. Essentially, if you ran a rule set, we're going to take statistics on what rules were being used and how many people deviated in certain rules, and then we kind of look into what's the most common rule set, and then go from there. And as far as if a large minority of the tournaments used a deviation of a rule compared to the majority, then as far as uniform goes, it would be optional until the community naturally found out on its own which rule set to go forward with. And it was kind of sad because I think there's a lot of misinformation that floats around in terms of like how often a rule set is used. Because I think off the top of my head, during the time when the Meta Knight ban was falling apart, people were like, the Meta Knight ban is dying and stuff like that in terms of the perception on Smashboards, when in reality, if you actually counted the number of tournaments or number of tournament entrants and number of tournament events that were using the Meta Knight ban at the time, there were more Meta Knight ban tournaments being run at that time, even though it was being proclaimed the Meta Knight ban and it ran its course. Different things like that. It would have clarified and put everybody on the same page as far as what the community was doing, and then public discourse could have been a lot more productive instead of destructive, as it's been with the power void or the vacuum void that was created when the rule set committee was disbanded.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they should have given us maybe a month or two to
at least
unveil that, maybe more, but it definitely, I designed it so that it would have righted itself in about 2 or 3 months, but that's not entirely up to me. I don't own the site. It's up to the site administration, people that outrank me, and the moderator administrative queue. But I wish it had been given a shot, because it would have been a better direction than the anarchy that we kind of have now.
Yes. Now, do you feel that the Unity 3.0 rule set structure would have been successful?
There was literally no way that it could have not been successful, at least to my knowledge, because in terms of design, because literally it was just going to be what the people themselves wanted as far as rules goes, because it was going to be entirely statistic based, and the only time the Unity rule set committee was going to have to even really decide on things, to be honest, would be if it's something that's like absurd, where people decide to make the common rule set, we're going to rock paper scissors to see who wins the Brawl tournament, or something crazy like that. That's just a hypothetical, but you get what I mean, like something absolutely crazy that would be a detriment to competitive the competitive values of a Brawl tournament. But honestly, that situation probably just from a rational decision making theory standpoint, that probably would never happen. So it would have worked, I think. It just kind of depends on it would have depended on the committee really being diligent about keeping tabs on what rule sets were being used. That would have been the only limiting factor. And with how dedicated the group was to the community, I have zero doubts that it would have continued on.
Now, you don't think it ever became like a little too complex? Like, would you have had a problem in explaining the Unity through 3.0 system to the public, or like, is there any kind of concerns in that type of way?
I mean, it's kind of complex, but I don't think as far as the committee itself and the process, I don't think it was too complex. Or I think just I think the main issue is just the perceived public backlash at the sticky policy, which was if your tournament didn't run the Unity rule set, then the rule set was or the tournament couldn't be sticking on Smashboards. But in reality, 90% of the tournaments will never be sticking on Smashboards just because there aren't that many people that are going to attend to it. And then at that point, I can't really think off the top of my head of a tournament that was denied a sticky that merited a sticky just because of the rule set. Like the only real issue that we've had or that occurred was going to be Apex, but obviously that got a sticky. So was the sticky policy that was pretty much the undoing of the URC an issue? Not really. But does it give a convenient method to undermine the committee? Yeah, kind of. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Before we move on, do you have any other comments about like before we shift topics about the inner workings of the URC or anything like that? Because it is like a rare topic. I don't think people usually get to hear, and I think it's like a really cool little part of this interview.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of rule set theory that I just wish people would research on, and everything now at this point in the game is kind of superficial in terms of, as I've mentioned, whether someone likes a specific thing or not is going to determine its legality, which is pretty scary if you think about what the ramifications of that are. If I think we might end up going down to we've gone from 13 stages to 10 stages to 7 recently. Who's to say that it's not going to go down to 5 or 3, over
I
time.
played with 4 stages while I was in Japan, and it was hell. Oh man. Now, what about the current rule sets you see for nationals right now? I mean, we do see many different rule sets out there, even for national. It's really quite interesting. But I'd say, arguably, one of the more common ones we see is the Apex rule set.
Yeah.
Now, without counting ones that deviate way too far from that, would you say that this rule set's kind of performing fine in our current community and situation, or are there any big changes you'd like to see made from that?
What do you mean by performing fine? Do a lot of people use the Apex rule set? I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, it seems like they are, yes. But I mean,
do I think it's a good rule set? No, not really.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess.
What would you like to see changed about it personally? Besides FD only for your character.
Actually, I hate FD as a ice climber. A fun fact, it might sound crazy, but if you counterpick some ice climber players to FD, they'll probably have played that stage with their character literally, on times that they could probably I could probably count on.
It's very rare.
Maybe 15 times in tournament in 2.5 years that I've actually played games on FD.
But would you pass up the opportunity to play on FD in tournament?
Every time I tell myself I should not do it, and then I always do, and then I always lose. And then I lose. So I need to stop. I really do need to stop.
Oftentimes when I'll play a tournament match versus Ice Climbers, and I know they have a pocket character, I'll purposely not ban FD or even counterpick it just to make sure that they stay Ice Climbers. Wait, yeah. I can do this? I can stay Ice Climbers on FD? And I'm like, go for it. Just don't switch to Meta Knight, please.
Yeah, well, they don't know that Yoshi's Island is the godsend with the platform.
Yeah,
Yeah, Ocean banned that very quickly when we played. But
interesting.
but yeah, going back to that Apex thing, I wish that the stage list was more consistent to something. Like when you make a rule set, there should be like some sort of underlying value or principle that guides what's legal and what isn't. And to be honest, a lot of the Apex stages are pretty arbitrary. The rule set that we run in Kansas City for the KC Brawl tournaments is my litmus test is if there are hitboxes, then it's banned. So we run a 9-stage list of Battlefield, Smashville, FD, Yoshi's Island, Pokemon Stadium 1, Lilac Cruise, Castle Siege, Delfino Plaza, and Rainbow Cruise. But at the same time, we temper that with 2 bans because, in my opinion, you should add more stage bans instead of banning the stage altogether in terms of maintaining diversity. There's a lot of like mathematical theory into why it's more competitively neutral, but the long story short is by removing these stages, people are artificially creating a 2-headed perceived monster of Ice Climbers and Meta Knight, when Ice Climbers are obviously they're a very unversatile character. They are not very flexible at all with stages, and by banning the stages, it makes one character really good, but at the expense of, other characters that are much more flexible as far as how good they are across stages. But is that principle being rewarded? No, it's being it's a detriment just because it's a skill to be good on multiple stages. Like it's kind of undebatable. That's how you win. You give yourself a better chance of winning by being able to play on a stage better. And if you're changing the rules just because a character can't play on a stage, that makes no sense. So instead, you just give them more bans. And then overall, in theory, you're left with a more neutral stage overall. So like, I wish that the Apex rule set would have a more consistent, guideline in terms of what stages they use. And then also, I wish there was one more stage ban instead of one, because that would address both Meta Knight and Ice Climbers in terms of overpowered, if that's what people really think is the case. And it wouldn't just be Ice Climbers, it'd be, whatever other character is being played at the time, whoever. So that's kind of the main issue that I would. Everything else, it's kind of standard stuff. 8 minutes, 3 stocks.
Yeah.
The LGL is kind of low, but at this point, people don't like Ledge Champion, so it is what it is.
But very interesting answer. I really enjoyed your thoughts on like the whole litmus test you mentioned about how your standard is if it has a hitbox, it's gone. So at least. Yeah. Like having like a purpose behind what you're choosing rather than it just being arbitrary, which I feel happens way too often with rule sets these days.
Yeah, and I picked the hitbox one because there's like a lot of like legal ramifications. And when I say legal, I don't mean whether the stage should be legal. I mean like the gaming commission of your state, whether it breaks their laws legal on why that hitbox theory is ideal. But at the same time, I understand other people saying, if you can reasonably react to a hazard, then it should be legal. That's another litmus test that people use. I respect those kinds of rule set TOs a lot more than the ones that are just like, I don't like this stage because I get sharked or something like that. Then that indicates a problem with if there's a character that's a strictly dominant strategy on a stage, that's a problem with the character, not the stage per se.
Exactly.
But you can also augment that first by throwing out more stage bans as well. So there are multiple ways to address that issue without removing diversity altogether.
My last question about rule sets is, what are your thoughts when a tournament, especially national, deviates so radically far from the normal rule set? Like, do you find it interesting? And I think the best example of this would be actually the last time we saw each other in a tournament would be the Wobo series. So Wobo's notorious for having Meta Knight banned. Even still, Wobo 5 later this year will be Meta Knight banned. Has more stages. I personally think it's really fun. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's awesome. I wish that I could capitalize on that market, especially like with the Meta Knight ban, with there being so many people that are supportive of that rule set. I think that there's a huge demographic that kind of gets the short end of the deal, or the short end of the stick, as far as tournaments go, that would like to have that. And if there's a group that wants to go to that event to make it successful, then by all means they should host it.
Yeah.
Do I really think the Meta Knight ban's that huge of a deviation though from the standard rule set? I mean, if you really look at it, it's one rule. It's a very important rule. Don't get me wrong, but it's still at the end of the day one
Well, like,
rule.
I guess it's not as different for you, but like coming from Atlantic North, like where our stages are dwindling more and more by the day, it's not
Sure.
just the Midnight Bandit that's different about WoBo. It's also being able to play on like Brinstar, and I think Rainbow is also legal. So
Yeah,
it's that's why I guess I see it more of a deviation than other
that's
regions.
true.
'Cause
Yeah,
it's
I
not
got
just that.
you. And even with Mennonite being banned, a lot of the stages that are legal on there, I would not have
Hmm.
hitboxes, but
Yeah.
that's my agenda. That's but really props to Zyra. Like actually, part of why I got into the URC was that I was trying to generate support for a national tournament locally in the Kansas City area. I had a couple sponsors lined up, and my main premise was everybody else is going to host these huge, Mennonite legal tournaments. I didn't really think about it in terms of Mennonite legal just because there hadn't been very many Mennonite.
Hmm.
Like a Mennonite band tournament wasn't its own like genre or on the radar as a genre of tournament that you could really go to. But I did know that there was like huge movements to have the character ban. I said, well, it's kind of like a Battlefield of Dreams scenario where
Yep.
if you ban him, they will come, and that was my hope. But then my sponsor dropped out. But I'm glad that at least someone is pushing forward something. It doesn't even have to be Mennonite. It could be stages. It could be
Hmm.
it could be anything. I would really like to see someone push forward a one stock tournament just to see how it does. Things like that. It doesn't have to always be about Mennonite. That would be awesome to see. But having a
Hmm.
large data pool to pull from,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And props to Zyro or whoever is that entrepreneurial TO that wants to really push the envelope.
I do remember when you were planning that tournament. I don't even think it ever had like a name for it. I remember just everybody referred to it as Deluxe's quote unquote Mennonite Band National. And that's that was basically the
Yeah, I
whole
mean,
driving force
it
behind
had
it.
a lot of
And
support. I just wish that
yeah,
the
I was
sponsor
excited.
would drop out. Would
Yeah,
have it happened. Maybe in the future, maybe not. We'll see.
maybe. Who knows? Hey, if you ever want to announce a new tournament, fire up one of these interviews and get it out
We're
there. I'll stream it.
good. Good.
All right, moving on to what I think is arguably the most important factor of Deluxe when it comes to Smash. Obviously, the URC is a big thing, but it's a little bit more behind the scenes in terms of how it worked. But at least in my impression, when people hear the word Deluxe, they think the Smash Lab.
Thanks.
So start off with what can you tell us about the Smash Lab? What is it for those of you who don't know out there?
Well, the sad part is the Smash Lab doesn't exist anymore as a sub user group
What
on
a great way to
Smashboards.
start out.
I mean, that's a huge failure on my part, but we got pretty inactive for a while. It's hard with essentially the group was a group of people that would analyze the game mechanics just to kind of advance the metagame in terms of different things that can be used or abused depending on your viewpoint from a game mechanic level. And believe it or not, like people tend to think that I know a lot about the game, and I think my greatest asset as a player is I don't know as much as I should know, and I try to always learn
Mhm.
what I should know in order to win. And a lot of times people ask me a question, and my answer always is going to be if I don't know. I don't know the answer to your question, but I do know who to ask to find out the answer to it. And at this point, the Smash Lab is kind of a network of people on Skype that will talk. And if there's like some sort of technical question that we need an answer to, they'll look at it, and someone in that group of knowledge will either know the answer or know how to figure out the answer based on some sort of testing within the game.
Mhm. Now, when the Smash Lab did exist, what was your role in it?
My role in the Smash Lab, I started off as just a general member, and then it went through its first kind of dying phase, and then I think it was on the brink of no longer kind of being a viable group anymore, I decided to take over and see if I could instill life into it. So we kind of
Hmm.
went through a lot of procedural overhauls to make it more active. I had a kind of a huge plan in terms of some testing and things like that. But I think between Yakaru, Bionic, and myself, we were the three leaders in title. I think I was more of a figurehead in terms of the other two people because those two, Bionic and Yakaru, are like the more knowledgeable people, and they definitely put a lot of the work that I would end up getting credit for some reason or another. Unfortunately for them, fortunately for me, I guess.
Now, speaking of credit, like what kind of projects did the Smash Lab kind of go about to do? Like what kind of like what projects were released? Were there any that were in progress that never got to see the light of day? Things like that.
Yeah, well, a lot of the projects were saved. There's in the competitive Brawl forum. There's a Smash Lab thread of different findings, stuff like that. Off the top of my head, there's like ledge slip mechanics and things like that. There's a couple files out there that float around, like what characters will land on the stage after they ledge slip,
Hmm.
a frame advantage on shield hit calculator, frame advantage or a frame data, like a detailed frame data database. Can't think of any other things off the top of my head. I think the main project that I was responsible for was the renovated and updated DI guide, which featured dual stick mechanics. I
Hmm.
spent a lot of time writing that one. That was kind of like my main job, and that one took a really long time.
I remember that. Yes.
And that was a nightmare to put together. A lot of long nights for Fino and myself.
Yeah. Now, I know you said that the Smash Lab still kind of exists in a way through like just like this network on Skype, which is really cool to hear. Is there any kind of chance though, or actually, would you even like to see the Smash Lab kind of come back to a more official form, so to say? Or is it maybe
Um,
too late at this point?
I think that I don't like the idea that people would want a group to find out everything for them. I think the best way to go about it would be I would love it if individual people start discovering things
Hmm.
on their own, and part of that because I'm lazy, but also because I definitely would there's a lot of like I have my own ideas and preconceived notions on how the game should be played and what can be abused and what can't be abused and stuff like that. And someone else might see a different situation and see, there's some potential there and something that I wouldn't see. And a lot of the times, if you just tell people the answer to the question, they won't look for that better answer that might be out there.
Makes
So,
sense.
yeah, realistically, would it be good if the group came back? It would be good in some ways, but at the same time, I think what would be better is if a lot of people really that wanted to win would do everything they can to win. That means understanding the game to its
Hmm.
fullest. I think that would be the best.
Now, what about an idea where you said for the BBR earlier, a project you would like to see would be like not a rule set, but like a suggestions for rule set or like a guide to it. What if the Smash Lab were to make like these aren't the answers you want, but maybe these are some ways to kind of get your mind going in terms of how to create new and innovative strategies and techniques, like a
Oh,
guide to Smash Labbing. How do you think that would go?
I mean, okay. I'm a public administration college student, and one of the classes I'm actually taking right now is innovation management, and
Hmm.
it's pretty much different methods that different public or nonprofit organizations will use to build innovation. And I mean, there's lots of theory in terms of how to go about innovating, and I think the main thing would be just for people to learn, for themselves or having that spirit of independence, just to try to figure it out, not be afraid to take the risk to
Hmm.
get that reward. And there are resources out there. Like if anybody wants to ask me, I answer. I'll come home from work and there'll be like 12 people on Skype that have asked me different questions about different situations in the game, and I'll just go through and like I try to very diligently answer all the questions. Sometimes the questions are, no offense to some of the people, pretty bad, for lack of a better term. I'm like, what?
It
No,
happens.
don't do that. But at the same time, you know, that might have actually been a really good question sometimes. And sometimes I think about it later and feel bad, where it's like, maybe I should have not just said no, that's a bad idea, and said, you should try it, and then come back and tell me what you come up with, and then maybe I can learn from it too. Which I think I probably should do a better job of doing. But if people are interested, they can comment on the thread or on the video. I can go ahead and put together some innovation theory ideas, as well as some stuff more Brawl specific. I'd be willing to be a resource in that manner. It might be a fun project to get the Smash Lab back together over.
That does sound interesting. Yeah, I agree. Now I do have a series of more random fun questions, and that's how we're gonna wrap this interview.
Oh God!
There is a good amount of them, but
All right, let's go.
they're not gonna take that long. First question. I often see you and other people in Smashboards using an avatar that mentions Fat Bat Legends. What are the Fat Bats?
The Fat Bat Legends is just the logo that I played some dodgeball when I was back in Southern California in high school. There was just a situation where I kind of had injuries from baseball, so I kind of stopped playing for a while. And then my friends were like, when the movie came out, they're like, yo, we should all play dodgeball. And then I was like, all right, let's go play dodgeball, guys. And then we started throwing, the big rubber balls around at each other. And we figured out that, I was pretty good. I think we won our high school league at, and then we went on and did this tournament at, with radar guns and stuff like that. And I think I topped out at 82 or something like that with a big red rubber ball, which essentially would break ankles if you got hit by it, or noses if
Wow.
So yeah, if there were a van passing by on the street, it would probably knock the van over. It's about how hard the ball was being thrown. So when Skatar 2 comes around and there's a dodgeball tournament, I'm gonna start training now, and hopefully I can get back up to a little above 70 or so, and maybe mix in a couple sliders and curveballs, and put in some work in the dodgeball tournament. So I'll be ready. But that's what the Fat Bat Legends is. It was just the dodgeball team. Yeah. Because think about it. If you lost to the Fat Bats, how would you feel after the game? Let's be real. How would you feel?
I don't know. I really can't imagine losing to a team called the Fat Bats.
Exactly.
So how did that spread around Smash? People just saw the logo and this whole following of DeLux here, the Fat Bat legend himself. So it just kind of spread from there.
I would just tell people to use my avatar if and then they would. Mewtwo King had it for the longest time.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah. Well, his was a negotiation. He's like, "What should I do versus Ice Climbers?" I'm like, "All right, Mewtwo King. Let me tell you what you should do versus Ice Climbers, but you got to use my avatar." And then did he ever use any of the stuff I told him? Nope. But at the same time, he still used my avatar, so no questions asked on my part.
There you go. Who is your favorite Smasher to watch?
My favorite Smasher to watch. Right now, it's hard to say. Probably, and I'm gonna pull. It's gonna be the fanboy bias, but MJG is probably by far the most influential player on my playstyle that I have come across in terms of just having fun to watch. People get, they complain about people camping and stuff like that, and they don't like that. They don't think it's exciting. But when I see him play Toon Link at the highest level, it's like art. Sometimes it's freaking absurd. I don't understand. But that's probably my favorite. Outside of that, the really high level players of each character. Kakara is my favorite Meta Knight by far. Vinny's my favorite Ice Climber to watch right now, but back in the day, Sword Guard and Hylian were my favorite Ice Climbers to watch. Zero Suits, Quicksilver, one of my favorite Zero Suits, Dakpo. Not a lot of people give him a lot of rep. DRN's freaking crazy. It's another Zero Suit to watch, B115, obviously Salem, Nick Riddle,
Yeah.
Do a lot of Zero Suit watching now that I'm trying to like actually take the character a lot more seriously.
Mhm. All right. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
I'd be able to fly.
Okay. Any reason why?
It's pretty straightforward. I mean,
Just to be the true Fat Bat legend.
yeah, dude. How broken would that be if I could fly?
That
You
would
have
be
to understand, I'm an Ice Climbers main, and I get camped nonstop. And if I could fly, that'd be pretty awesome. Then they'd probably be maybe fifth best character in the game if they could fly.
Only fifth best. That's
Only
it.
fifth. Only fifth.
Only fifth.
If they had a command grab, like if Belay were a command grab and they grab people out of the air, then they might be second.
Maybe.
Maybe
But
third.
maybe they would be in like A tier, not in their own S tier.
Nah. Yeah.
Would you rather watch a video of a win compilation or a fail compilation?
A fail compilation? You say?
Yeah. Yes. So like, I guess do you want to see people doing like awesome, cool things, or people just make total jerks of themselves and just screw up?
Well, depends what kind of mood I'm in. I tend to watch more, like just from a Brawl standpoint. I'll watch myself lose so many times and just like pick that apart and figure that out because I'm very advanced my metagame, one loss at a time.
Okay. Would you rather get a 2-week dream vacation or spend a day with anybody in the world but in a bad location? So I guess the dream vacation would be on your own, by the way it's worded.
I would take the dream vacation.
Okay.
I would not want to put somebody into a bad situation with me because that would suck.
What kind of place would you go for on a dream vacation?
I would go to Dodger Stadium and watch some baseball.
Cool.
All day.
Yes, you did mention earlier you were quite the baseball fan.
They would have to win. If they lost, then all bets are off.
If it's a dream vacation, let's hope that they do.
Well, I don't know, dude, because in my dreams, the Dodgers, they lose and let me down, and it's always wait till next year. So it could be a nightmare vacation, too, because not all dreams are positive.
Interesting.
Snack on that for lunch.
Huh. It is almost our lunchtime, considering how often we're up at night.
Yeah, team night shift.
Yeah. All right, and this is the last fan question we have is, would you rather live the life of wealth and fame or live the life of a Pokemon master?
Well, I'm against dogfighting by and large, for the most part. So I would probably, I would take the money and glory. Let's be real. The Pokemon, that's for someone else. That they can. That's like the Michael Vicks of the world and those kinds of people. So
to some people, yeah.
Yeah. Shots fired, Pokemon community.
Damn, shots fired. All right. Well, I guess like every good interview, we should wrap up with. Do you have any shout outs for all your fans out there?
Man, if I have fans, they are terribly misguided and need to reevaluate who and what they believe in. But
wow, you just lost all two of your fans.
Nah, there's a lot of people that that I want to thank. A lot of them I can't really from a Brawl standpoint. Fino's a big influence. Yeah, he definitely helped me out. He taught me to play. Avro MJG, my current training partner and pretty much my losses in bracket. Legit, pretty much everybody in the Midwest that's cool. Kane's awesome. Texas people, Dakpo, Denti, all the ATL South people that come to my tournament, they're awesome. There's so many people. This is like not a fair question. We're gonna be here for like 20 minutes if I get everybody in. Let's be honest.
As long as you need.
As long as I need. All right, you got time. This is gonna happen. I see a pencil clicking here saying wrap it up. Dang, we're getting played off the stage. So pretty much anyone in the KC Brawl area, my good friend Fragger, Josh, he's pretty awesome. He's gonna be the next upcoming Diddy Kong man. You guys just you wait.
Okay.
All the Wichita scene, Iowa, Nebraska. That would be like Domo, B-Pow, Mr. Doom, Zeton. Pretty much anyone that's taught me how to play this game. Vinny's pretty awesome. Lane's pretty awesome. Hylian, pretty awesome. Sword Guard, pretty awesome. Big D, my late night chat buddy. Uh, man, so many people. Loki, the person that convinced me to pick up Zero Suit Samus, she gets a shout out. Bionic and Yakaru for pretty much giving me credit for everything they worked so hard to ever achieve. Uh, yep, that's there's probably
That's
more
great.
that I'm forgetting.
See, you went from having nobody to say, not having any fans, nobody to thank for it, and look at this, you got a great list going on.
And I'm probably gonna be like forgetting someone. I'm gonna feel like really horrible about
You
it.
can
And
you can leave a comment on the video with all the people you
that's
forgot
not
to
the
mention.
same though. That's definitely not the same.
It
I
really
would
isn't, and you're going to disappoint a lot of people. I'm sorry.
disappoint. Oh, shout outs to Chibo and
Thank
to
you.
the Chibo Chan and also the VG Bootcamp group that was also in the vote. Who else was in the vote? Alpha Zealot for buying Smashboards.
It was a hell of a vote.
Mark for running the BBR. Anyone who voted Iceheimer's into their own tier for being completely wrong. So that's another shout out. Uh, yeah, that'll do it.
All right.
Iceheimer's are bad. Iceheimer's are bad.
Is that how you want to wrap up the interview? Is saying
That's
ice
how I want to
climbers are
wrap up the
bad.
interview. Iceheimer's are bad.
Ice
And people
climbers
should
are
feel bad
bad.
for putting them into their own tier because they're bad.
DeLux 2013 right there. You heard
Yeah.
it here first. So I want to give a big shout out to DeLux for having me here. Shout out to everybody in the BBR who does make this interview possible, and I want to thank everybody for letting me have a chance to interview DeLux here. I really enjoyed it. Really, really good interview. This went on much longer than I expected, but it was very, very fun. And
Yeah,
I
we
did
shot
not.
over by half an hour. Half an
What?
hour.
Oh yeah,
Shot over by half an hour.
just
No
only.
big.
Nah, not a big deal. So, for those of you out there who do want to catch other Brawl Backroom interviews, be sure to check out youtube.com/the Brawl Backroom. You'll find our other 5 episodes that have taken place so far. And the next one, I'm sure, will be in about a month or two. But speaking of the next episode, you have to vote for who gets interviewed next. So that is up to you, the viewers out there. The next 5 people we are going to have up for voting are Ally, Bionic, CJ, Denti, and Eyesight. So you guys have to vote for who you want to see next, and then they will be interviewed and posted to the channel as well. You can vote by visiting the Brawl Backroom interview thread on Smashboards, or vote via our Facebook and Twitter groups. And you can vote multiple times, one on each place. So if you really, really, really want to see Ally get interviewed, you can vote for him on Smashboards, you can vote for him on Facebook, and vote for him on Twitter. So be sure to get your voice in, get it heard, and share this interview with all your friends, by all means, and spread the channel around. Check out the other interviews and look forward to future ones as well. This has been CT Chibo here interviewing DeLux, and I want to thank you all for watching and have a good night.